For months, she parked in his driveway like it was her right, until he called the tow truck. Twice. What happened next? A downfall so public the entire neighborhood watched. Reginald Reggie Carter was a patient man. He had to be. He spent his days managing a classroom full of middle schoolers in Lakeland, Florida, trying to make science exciting for kids who cared more about their phones than the periodic table. He had a system, a rhythm to his life, and he liked it that way. His home was his sanctuary. A modest but well-kept single-story brick house with a neatly trimmed lawn, a driveway just big enough for his car and the occasional visitor. It wasn't much, but it was his. A place where he could unwind, grade papers, and watch the game in peace. Until Blythe Vanderholt decided his driveway was hers. It started small. The first time Reggie saw her silver Lexus RX sitting in his driveway, he figured it was a mistake. Maybe she had guests over, and they needed to shuffle cars around. No big deal. He let it go. But then it happened again. And again. At first, Blythe always had a reason. She was just running inside for a second, or dropping something off. She'd flash a tight-lipped smile, a dismissive wave of her manicured hand, and that was supposed to be enough. Reggie didn't like it, but he wasn't the type to make a fuss over nothing. Until the day he came home from work, tired, hungry, and ready to collapse on the couch, only to find her Lexus parked dead center in his driveway. Again, this time, there was no one in sight. Reggie took a deep breath, exhaled through his nose, and knocked on Blythe's door. She answered with the kind of expression that made it clear she already knew why he was there. "Reggie, what's wrong?" she asked, feigning surprise, her tone dripping with condescension. Reggie nodded toward his driveway. "Your car's in my spot again." Blythe blinked, as if the thought had never occurred to her. "Oh, I was just... well, I had a delivery, and the driver needed room to back out." She smiled like that explanation should have ended the conversation. "You don't mind, do you?" "I do, actually." Reggie kept his voice calm. "I need you to stop parking in my driveway." Blythe sighed dramatically. "Well, I live right next door, Reggie. It's not like I'm parking on some stranger's property." "You're parking on mine," Blythe scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Are you really that bothered by a car sitting there for a few minutes?" "It's not a few minutes. It keeps happening," Reggie said, crossing his arms. "And I need it to stop." She let out a sharp laugh. All right. No need to get all worked up. I'll move it." She did. That time. But it didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Reggie would come home and find her car exactly where it shouldn't be. If he left a note, it disappeared. If he knocked on her door, she suddenly wasn't home. One evening, after a long day at school, Reggie pulled up to see not just her car in his driveway, but another one, some shiny black BMW that definitely didn't belong to him. Enough was enough. Reggie parked on the street, grabbed his phone, and snapped a picture. Then he knocked on Blythe's door, harder this time. She opened it with zero urgency, her face a mask of mild annoyance. "Reggie," she said, dragging out his name like he was inconveniencing her. "Whose car is that?" he asked, pointing toward his driveway. "Oh, that's my friend's," she said breezily. "We were having a little get-together and, well, you weren't home. Thought it wouldn't matter." "It does matter," Reggie said, his patience thinning. "This isn't a parking lot, Blythe. This is my home." She folded her arms, tilting her head like he was the unreasonable one. "Well, you should have said something earlier. I would have moved it." Reggie clenched his jaw, inhaling slowly. "I am saying something. Right now. Move the car." Blythe rolled her eyes, but finally stepped inside to call her friend. Reggie waited. 10 minutes. 15. At 20 minutes, he was done waiting. He walked back to his own house, sat on his couch, and started looking up the number for the local towing company. But this was just the beginning. Reggie wasn't the type to stir up drama. He lived his life quietly, minded his business, and gave people the benefit of the doubt. But Blythe Vanderholt had officially crossed the line. The next morning, he left early for work, but not before calling the HOA. He didn't expect much. HOAs were notorious for siding with the people who had the most influence. And Blythe? She was practically royalty on the board, but he figured it was worth a shot. The response was exactly what he expected. "Sir, unless there is physical damage to your property, we really don't get involved in neighbor disputes," the bored-sounding woman on the other end said. "Have you tried speaking with her?" Reggie sighed. "That's all I've been doing." "Well, we can send a courtesy email, but that's about it." A courtesy email? Yeah, that'd teach her. But Reggie wasn't going to waste his energy arguing. He thanked the woman and hung up. If the HOA wasn't going to do anything, he'd handle it himself. He left one last note on Blythe's windshield that morning. Big, bold letters. "Do not park here again." But when he came home that evening, the note was gone. Her Lexus RX was not only in his driveway again, but parked at an angle like she didn't even care. Reggie pulled his car onto the street, staring at the scene in disbelief. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. Fuming, he walked up to her door and knocked. Hard. It took a full minute before she finally answered, wine glass in hand, looking like she'd just been in the middle of a relaxing evening. "Reggie," she said, drawing out his name like he was an interruption to her night. "I need you to move your car." She took a slow sip of wine before responding. "Oh, yeah, about that. I meant to text you, but I figured you wouldn't mind since you always park on the street anyway." Reggie's fingers flexed at his sides. He forced himself to stay calm. "I do mind. This is my property, Blythe." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head like he was being unreasonable. "Reggie, seriously, you're getting bent out of shape over a driveway." He took a step closer. "No. I'm getting bent out of shape because I've told you over and over to stop doing this and you keep ignoring me." Blythe rolled her eyes, swirling the wine in her glass. "All right, fine. I'll move it." Reggie exhaled, willing himself to let it go. He turned to head back to his house, and then Blythe muttered something under her breath. Not loud enough for him to catch every word, but just enough for him to catch the tone. He turned back. "What did you just say?" She gave him an innocent look. "Nothing. No, you said something." Blythe smirked. "I just don't get why some people are so uptight about the smallest things." There it was. That smug, passive-aggressive entitlement that made his blood boil. Reggie didn't say anything else. He just walked back to his house, pulled out his phone, and saved the number for the towing company. That night, as he sat on his couch, grading papers, his mind kept replaying that conversation. The dismissiveness, the arrogance, the sheer audacity. She wasn't going to stop, and Reggie was done playing nice. But Blythe had no idea what was coming next. The next time Blythe parked in his driveway, Reggie didn't knock. He didn't leave a note. He didn't call. He called the tow truck instead. It was a Friday evening, and he had just pulled up after a long week at school. He was exhausted, but the sight of her Lexus RX sitting in his driveway like it belonged there, that gave him a second wind. This time, he didn't hesitate. He parked his own car down the street, dialed the towing company, and gave them one simple instruction. "I need this car gone." The tow truck arrived in less than 20 minutes. It was almost poetic how quickly it happened. The driver hopped out, assessed the situation, and simply nodded. "She's parked in your driveway?" "Yep," Reggie confirmed. "Got proof of ownership?" Reggie pulled out his property deed. He'd come prepared. "All right," the driver said. "Let's hook her up." Within minutes, Blythe's luxury SUV was lifted off the ground, wheels locked in place. Reggie crossed his arms, watching with satisfaction as the truck pulled out of the driveway, her car disappearing down the street. He had no idea what kind of reaction to expect. Would she show up at his door screaming, call the cops, pretend like she had no idea what happened? Turns out he didn't have to wait long to find out. About an hour later, just as he was settling in for the night, bam, 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 his front door shook from the force of Blythe's fists pounding against it. Reggie didn't rush. He took his time, standing up, stretching his arms, making her wait. Then he opened the door. Blythe stood there in flip-flops and silk pajama pants, looking absolutely livid. Her phone was clutched in her hand, her perfectly styled blonde bob slightly out of place. "Where is my car?" she snapped. Reggie tilted his head. "Oh, you mean the one that was illegally parked in my driveway?" Her nostrils flared. "Don't play games with me, Reggie. Where is my car?" He shrugged, casually. "Towed." She stared at him, mouth falling open in pure disbelief. "You did what?" "You heard me," Reggie said. "You wouldn't stop parking in my driveway, so I had it removed. Simple as that." Blythe let out a sharp, hysterical laugh. "Oh, you are going to pay for this! Do you know who I am? I'm on the HOA board! I have connections, Reggie!" He gave her a slow blink. "Good for you. Your car's at Sunshine Towing off Orange Blossom Trail. Have a good night." And with that, he shut the door. But Blythe wasn't done. She stood outside his house for a full 10 minutes, ranting and raving, switching between outrage and thinly veiled threats. She even tried calling the cops, but when the officers arrived, they barely gave her the time of day. "You had her car towed from your own property?" the officer asked Reggie. "Yep," he confirmed, handing over his deed. The officer glanced at the document, then turned back to Blythe. "Ma'am, he's within his rights. If you want your car back, you'll need to pay the impound fee." The way Blythe's face turned red. Reggie would have paid good money to frame that moment, but something told him this wasn't over. And he was right. Reggie thought that after getting her car towed, Blythe would finally get the message. She didn't. If anything, she doubled down. It started small, little passive-aggressive digs that were more annoying than anything else. First, she left a note on his door, written in bright red marker, as if she thought she was making some kind of legal statement. "This is a community. We should all be more considerate of our neighbors." Reggie tossed it straight in the trash. Then came the HOA complaints. A letter arrived in his mailbox a few days later, claiming his front porch plants were in violation of community aesthetics. Reggie laughed out loud. The same potted ferns that had been there for the past 2 years were suddenly a problem? Then another letter. His garbage bins were left out too long. And another. His mailbox paint was fading. By the 4th letter, Reggie wasn't even mad. He was impressed. She was putting in real effort. But the worst part? She started calling security on him. One evening, Reggie was watering his lawn when a white security SUV pulled up, lights flashing. A tall, middle-aged officer stepped out, adjusting his belt like he had something important to do. "You live here, sir?" he asked. Reggie frowned. "Yeah. Why?" The officer cleared his throat. "We received a call about some, suspicious activity." Reggie let out a slow breath. Suspicious. That word again. He turned his head, and sure enough, there she was. Blythe Vanderholt, standing on her porch, arms crossed, pretending to be oblivious. Reggie gave the officer a dry look. "So, watering my lawn is suspicious now?" The officer had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, sir, Save it!" Reggie cut him off. "I already know who called. Tell her to find a new hobby." The officer sighed, nodded, and walked back to his car. And Blythe? She smiled like she had won. Reggie wasn't having it. He marched straight up to her porch. "Blythe!" She blinked, feigning innocence. "Oh, everything okay, Reggie? I saw security here. Hope nothing serious happened." He folded his arms. "You know damn well why they were here." Blythe gasped. "Reggie, no need to be rude. I was just concerned. We have a duty to watch out for our neighborhood, don't we?" He stared at her. She wanted a reaction. She wanted him to lose his temper, to give her something she could use against him. So he did the one thing she didn't expect. He smirked. Calm, controlled, amused. "I'm done playing games, Blythe." His voice was low. "Steady. I gave you more chances than you deserved. But you keep pushing, so let's see what happens when I push back." For the first time, she looked unsure, and she should have been, because the next time she parked in his driveway, Reggie wasn't just going to tow her car, he was going to make sure it hurt. And Blythe had no idea what was coming. Reggie didn't have to wait long. Just 1 week later, on a Saturday afternoon, He pulled into his street, whistling to himself after a good morning at the gym, only to see Blythe's Lexus RX parked dead center in his driveway. Again. Not only that, it was blocking his garage. It was bold, disrespectful. And this time, his entire family was on the way over for a cookout. Reggie sat in his car for a moment, just staring. Then he put it in park, stepped out, and made one call. "Hey, this is Reggie Carter," he said, voice calm. "I need a car towed. Same location as last time," the dispatcher chuckled. "Let me guess. Same car too?" "You got it. We'll be there in 15. Reggie smiled. This time, Blythe was going to learn. He grabbed his folding chairs from the trunk and sat right on his porch, arms crossed, waiting. Minutes later, the tow truck rolled up. Fast. Efficient. These guys weren't playing around. The driver stepped out, adjusting his gloves. "We doing this again?" "Looks like it," Reggie said, gesturing to the car. The guy shook his head, smirking. "Some people never learn." With zero hesitation, the driver hooked up Blythe's Lexus and started lifting it onto the truck. That's when she came storming out. Blythe screeched like she'd just caught someone robbing her house. "Stop! What are you doing?" Reggie leaned back in his chair, sipping from his water bottle like he had all the time in the world. The tow driver didn't even look at her. He was already strapping the wheels down. Blythe marched up to Reggie, eyes blazing. "You called the tow truck again?" He arched an eyebrow. "You parked in my driveway again?" Her hands balled into fists. "I have guests over. There was no street parking." Reggie tilted his head. "Not my problem." She let out a frustrated growl. "You're being petty, Reggie. I told you I would have moved it." He sighed. Casual. Relaxed. "See, here's the thing, Blythe. You've told me that before. And yet, here we are." Her face turned a shade of red that bordered on medical emergency. "You don't understand what you're doing," she hissed. "I have connections. I can make things very difficult for you." Reggie laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, Blythe," he said, shaking his head. "I don't think you understand what's happening here." He gestured toward the tow truck. "Your car? It's already gone." She whirled around, and sure enough, the Lexus was halfway down the street. She let out a piercing shriek. "You're going to regret this!" she snapped. Reggie stood up slowly, dusting off his jeans. "No, Blythe, you are." She stood there, seething, as he turned and walked inside just as his family started arriving. And as they greeted him at the door, laughing, hugging, catching up, Blythe stood on her porch alone. But she wasn't done yet. And Reggie knew it. The second tow should have ended things. But Blythe? She wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. She wanted revenge. And this time, she wanted the whole neighborhood to watch. By Monday morning, Reggie was the villain. At least that's what Blythe wanted people to believe. The HOA board, her friends, sent out a community-wide email about the recent neighborly disputes that had escalated unnecessarily. The wording was carefully crafted, passive-aggressive but vague, making it seem like Reggie was the one causing trouble. Then the flyers started appearing. Yes, flyers, printed, laminated, and taped to every mailbox on the street. Is this the kind of community we want? Do we tow our neighbors instead of talking to them? It was laughable. Reggie yanked the one off his own mailbox and shook his head. She was really doing all this? Over a driveway? But the best part? Nobody was buying it. Blythe had pushed her luck one too many times. The morning after her latest stunt, Reggie's phone lit up with messages. Neighbors, parents from the school, even a few HOA members who weren't in Blythe's pocket. "Hey man, saw the flyer. What the hell is wrong with her? We all know she's a nightmare. She tried to fine me $200 last year for a wind chime. If she parks in your driveway again, I'll split the tow fee with you." Reggie chuckled at that last one. The best part? He didn't even have to defend himself. People had seen her antics for years. The unnecessary complaints, the fines, the power trips, and now that she was embarrassing herself so publicly, they were turning on her. Then came the HOA meeting. Normally Reggie didn't bother going, but this time he had a front row seat. He walked in, arms crossed, and took a seat right across from Blythe. She refused to look at him. The meeting started with the usual nonsense: budget talk, landscaping updates, a reminder about trash bin placement. Then one of the board members cleared his throat. "We need to address a complaint that's been filed regarding misuse of private property." Reggie leaned back, waiting. Blythe sat up straighter. She was ready to play the victim, but the board member kept going. "The complaint is against Blythe Vanderholt." Reggie didn't even hide his grin. Blythe's head snapped toward the board. "Excuse me." A few members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a woman in her 60s, sighed. "Blythe, we've had multiple reports of you harassing residents and using HOA resources for personal grievances." Blythe's jaw dropped. "That's ridiculous. I'm the one being harassed." But the board member kept reading. "We've reviewed several complaints, including misuse of security calls, unauthorized HOA communications, and retaliatory actions against residents." Blythe turned to the board, eyes wide. "You're taking his side?" The woman shook her head. "We're taking the side of the community." Blythe opened her mouth, but she had nothing to say. She looked around the room, searching for support, but found none. She wasn't in control anymore, and for the first time, she knew it. But Reggie wasn't done watching her fall. Blythe was losing control, and she knew it. For years, she'd ruled over the neighborhood like a self-appointed queen, using the HOA to bend the rules to her will. But now, her influence was slipping through her fingers, and she was desperate to grab onto anything to get it back. That's when she made her final mistake. 2 days after the HOA meeting, Reggie was pulling into his driveway when he noticed something strange. His trash cans were missing. Not tipped over, not moved to the side, just gone. He stepped out of his car, scanning the street, and then he saw them, behind Blythe's house, stacked neatly, like she had taken them on purpose. Reggie laughed, out loud. This woman had tried emails, flyers, security calls, and HOA fines. And now she had resorted to stealing trash cans. It was pathetic, but Reggie wasn't going to let it slide. He pulled out his phone, snapped a few clear photos, then calmly walked up to her front door. Knock. Knock. No answer. Reggie knocked again, harder. After a long pause, the door cracked open, and there she was. Blythe looked different. No smug expression, no fake smile, just tired, like she already knew she had lost. Reggie held up his phone. "You want to tell me why my trash cans are in your backyard?" She crossed her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." Reggie let out a low chuckle. "Blythe, I have pictures. Let's not do this." She stared at him, silent. "You've lost," he said simply. "You can't find me. You can't call security. The HOA isn't backing you. And now, you're out here stealing trash cans like a crazy person?" Blythe's eyes flashed with something sharp, but she didn't speak. Reggie took a step closer. Calm, steady, unbothered. "You've spent months trying to make my life hell. But now?" He gestured to her quiet, dark house. "Seems like you're the one who's miserable." She swallowed hard, her lips pressing together. Then, without another word, she shut the door. Reggie smiled. That was the smartest thing she'd done all year, but there was still one last piece of justice left. The next morning, Reggie filed an official complaint with the HOA. This time, against Blythe. The evidence was stacked against her. Harassment reports from multiple neighbors, false security calls, unauthorized HOA communications. And now? Theft. By the end of the week, the board had no choice but to take action. Blythe Vanderholt was removed from the HOA board. Her power? Gone. Her control? Over. And the best part? She never parked in Reggie's driveway again. Because some people only learn when they have everything taken away. Blythe never spoke to Reggie again. Not a single word. No glares, No smug little smirks. No passive-aggressive complaints about his plants or his trash cans. She avoided him completely. And honestly, that was the best outcome he could have asked for. For the first time in months, Reggie could pull into his driveway without hesitation. No cars blocking his way, no notes left on his door, no ridiculous HOA fines, just peace. But the neighborhood wasn't done talking. Blythe's downfall had become local legend. The woman who once ruled over the HOA with an iron fist had been kicked out of her own kingdom. People who had never spoken up before suddenly found their voices. She fined me $75 for leaving my bike on my porch once. She called security on my nephew because he was wearing a hoodie. I've lived here for 10 years, and I've never seen her actually help anyone. Reggie realized something. She had been a problem long before she came after him. He just happened to be the first one who fought back. And when he did, the whole community followed. But karma wasn't done with Blythe yet. A few months later, a for sale sign popped up in her yard. She was moving. Some said it was because she was embarrassed. Others whispered that she had too many enemies now to feel comfortable staying. Reggie didn't care why. When the moving trucks finally pulled away, he stepped onto his porch, took a deep breath, and let it all sink in. The fight was over, and he had won. The lesson? Some people think they can push others around forever. They think they can get away with being selfish, manipulative, and downright cruel, because no one has ever held them accountable. But eventually, they mess with the wrong person. And when that person stands up, the whole world watches them fall. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe. There's always more where that came from.